Good morning, everybody. So I wanted to discuss what happened yesterday in the tech world, where Shopify invested $260 million into Flexport. If you're not familiar with some of these companies, Shopify, one of the biggest Amazon competitors, Flexport is one of the largest, probably if not the most well-funded, highly valued logistics companies for shipping in the startup world. They raised $2.5 billion, was last valued, I believe, in early 2022 at 8.5 billion-ish, but a lot has gone on. So let's take a step back. First off, let's learn the history of what an uncapped investment is. Usually it happens when there's a hot company, they raise some money, they don't want to put a real valuation on the company, and investors really want to get in. Very much more common during 2021, during the ZERP era, when money was free flowing, which is why you'll see a lot of comments that this is an odd kind of matchup and instrument to invest in. But this actually makes a lot of sense in some odd ways. So I'm going to try and connect all the dots here. Basically, Flexport actually was valued at $8 billion, but this is after Ryan Peterson, the founder, left a few years ago. But lots of tech drama last year, September. They replaced him with Amazon executive for about a year. Handpicked, he made a huge blog post and talk about it. But in September, he replaced them. It was a huge shock. The company, when you replace a CEO, founder of an $8 billion, big number, but this was an Amazon executive at $1 trillion company, apparently kind of ran it into the ground a little bit. The details are still a little bit murky, but didn't run it like the startup that was needed and didn't accomplish what he had set out to do. But during this time, in June of 2023, Flexport took on an acquisition from Shopify. So step one further back. Shopify in 2022 basically paid $2.1 billion for this company called Deliver. Shopify does a lot of e-commerce, CPG, lots of startups love them, but they wanted to get into the logistics business. This makes sense. Internally, they were trying to build their own, definitely spent a lot of money, tens of millions, maybe hundreds of millions. They buy Deliver for $2.1 billion to try it themselves. Fast forward a year later, it's not working, their stock is way down, and who is the best person to work with? Maybe a former Amazon executive. So they offloaded Deliver and their logistics business, Shopify, to Flexport, to this new CEO of a formerly kind of $8 billion valued private startup. In return, they got about 13% of Flexport. So if we're doing the simple math here, basically Shopify owns now about 13% of Flexport, which kind of values that $2.1 billion acquisition about $1 billion. So within a year, they wiped out $1 billion worth of value, and they now own 13% of somewhat, the articles will say struggling these days, but look, it's not a fairy tale. That Flexport is going through some growing pains and dealing with a lot of issues after they ousted the CEO. And so now we can go to today. The news is that Shopify, with the new former CEO and founder, Ryan, have invested $260 million into Flexport, but it's an uncapped note, or safe, however you want to describe it. And why would they do this? It actually makes perfect sense, at least from a financial instrument perspective. We have no idea what the value of Flexport is. Last official priced round investment in early 2022, when they raised $900 million, was an $8 billion valuation. Are they worth that today? Absolutely not. But we don't want to value them. The whole point of an uncapped note is saying, great, here's money, in this case, $260 million. I'm sure there's a lot of other strings attached, like an interest rate. So great, they'll pay 10% interest. It's senior debt, so they'll get paid first. So the $2.5 billion that they've raised from VCs and hedge funds and private equity. Now, I assume Shopify will be the senior lender, and in this case, almost the lender of last resort. So Shopify owns 13%. They just invested another $260 million at an unspecified valuation, because if you value this company, it will basically set off a bunch of financial triggers. If for some reason they invested at a $4 billion, that's a 50% haircut. So every investor will have to mark down all of their shares. All the employees, they just valued it again, kind of like a 409A valuation. Also, Shopify, they own 13%. Their stake, whatever the value was, will also have to get marked down. So it basically saves a lot of headaches from a financial perspective. But who is Shopify's biggest competitor? Don't say the A word, it's Amazon. And they failed at logistics. They offloaded it to a startup that they thought was probably on the way up with a new Amazon CEO who kind of defected. And then all of this happened. So in that time, Shopify was at a kind of a low. Now their stock is up 100% in the last year. So they're now worth $100 billion again. 260 million, probably like a revolving credit, like here as you need it. It's not just here's 260 million, good luck. That's my assumption. It supports their partner. They are kind of doubling down on protecting their investment. They own 13, maybe even 20% of the company when this is all said and done, depending on how it works out. But it allows them to maybe get preferential treatment if they can get their customers better shipping. I know there's all the political stuff and the Red Sea and all the other issues going on, but this makes perfect sense. And maybe they get some upside. So imagine this does work and Flexport somehow becomes a 20, 50, $100 billion company, the biggest shipping logistics company in the world. They could 10x this investment and make billions of dollars off of it. So there is a lot of speculation around why this is happening, but I support this. No VC would touch this deal. I do call them a lender of last resort. No VC would give $260 million to a late stage company that already raised $2.5 billion. This is strategic. Tobi, from everything I've heard and read online, is an amazing founder, an amazing CEO, and they're a $100 billion company. I don't see really any downside right now. From a Shopify perspective, there's nothing like, oh, this can blow up. Flexport has assets, they have some IP. Do they want to acquire Flexport? I really don't think so. When they own 13, 15, even 20% of the company, I don't know what the future holds for Flexport in terms of exit acquisitions. Amazon won't buy them. Would Walmart buy them? There's only, when you get to 5, 10, 20 billion dollars, a few companies that can start to afford to purchase these companies. So maybe in a few years they can IPO, and then Shopify will make some money. They can sell out during that time, but it really isn't too much downside for Shopify at this point, who kind of got mixed up in a new CEO who was trying new things, took on a huge investment. I know Ryan was on the board during all this time, so it's not like he wasn't aware of all this. Maybe he would have done it differently. But from a Shopify perspective, this is really nice. No VC will give Flexport capital at this point. No bank, I can imagine, will give them capital. They laid off a lot of the company. This is some wartime CEO stuff right now, and we're going to see a lot more of this moving forwards. So I was just also thinking that Ryan joined Founders Fund. That's Keith Raboy as well. Well, formerly, now he's back at Khosla. But he also has OpenStore. OpenStore is a roll-up of Shopify networks and sellers. So it's not like they're not friends already. They definitely have a lot of connections behind the scenes. They play in those billion-dollar clubs and meetings, and they have a lot of investments together. So I don't see any real downside to this. Flexport isn't going anywhere anytime soon, especially with this investment. So just to recap, Shopify bought Deliver for